Hey everybody, it's me, Brandon. Today we are going to be talking about money. Okay, today we're going to be talking about a touchy subject, money. Why is it a touchy subject? Well, the part that money plays in our culture and psychology touches some raw nerves when we start to think about it bluntly. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on, but this is very much used to the advantage of those that hire you for your skills. So it's important to be aware of it. So to be prepared, just so be prepared. We're going to get into an area that isn't always comfortable, but it is really, really important. We're going to talk about how you maximize your earnings as an artist. So I'm going to do my part and go out on a limb, and I'm going to tell you the details of my earnings as far as I can remember since I started working as an artist. So I'm going to be kind of blunt. I'm going to be kind of open about that stuff, but I think that information is going to be very helpful to you. So one caveat here, I'm not really going to go into talking about how you get paid for freelance. I think there's a lot of other good resources out there to kind of figuring out how do you figure out a freelance wage. I've had kind of a unique art career in the sense that most of my time working as an artist has been working either as a contractor or a salaried employee for like a single business. So I'm going to be talking specifically about my experiences working, for an hourly or an hourly wage or for a salary. So first, I want to kind of just talk about the economics of making art. Anyone that has spent a reasonable amount of time trying to make art for a living knows that lots of people expect art to be very cheap or free. So I want to just kind of get past the dumb reasons client asks for cheap art and talk for a second about why art is undervalued from kind of more of an economic perspective. So the first one is just mass production. Since mass production emerged and became so huge in the last 100 years, um, it really kind of cheapens people's impression of art. You buy a lunchbox with some amazing He-Man art on it, and it only costs you $3. So you're going to be very confused when you're trying to hire an artist to make some custom He-Man art for you, and she asks for $100 to do the work. So mass production just screws with people's like perception of what the value of things is. Second, this is one we need to be a little bit more honest about, is the fact that lots of people like to make art. It's a pleasant job. Sure, making art takes a lot of work, but it's not necessarily unpleasant work. We're not coal miners or crab fishermen. We don't get horrible sounding diseases like black lung or end up being flung into ice cold waters if things go wrong. So, those type of jobs that are dangerous and unpleasant and can cause serious bodily harm, people don't want to do them. And so people have to pay more to incentivize people to do those difficult jobs. Art is a job that people want to do. It's something that people fantasize about and people love to do. So you have this kind of entry level of artists that's just flooded with artists at the same skill level. And what that's going to do is that's just going to push down the wages everyone's going to be willing to pay. You have so many artists out there that are so hungry that they are going to step on each other. They're going to do stuff for free. And so I'm not going to moralize and waggle my finger right now at artists and say, hey, stop working for free. I mean, you shouldn't work for free, absolutely. But I just think we should be honest and understand the economics of it. Like, there's a reason why, especially kind of the entry level, is it's hard to get paid. It's just because it's really, really flooded. Um, just to give you a sense of where I was. So like when I started as an artist, I worked for a souvenir company making $10 an hour, and when I left, I made about $12 an hour, which is not bad for making a living, especially 2004. Now fortunately, it's important to know that as your skill level increases as an artist, the pool you're competing with um, starts to decrease. And I would say that as your skill increases, the smaller and smaller that pool gets. So I kind of like to imagine it like the artist pool, like a pyramid, but imagine a pyramid with a very, very thick, wide base And then as it gets to the point gets thinner and thinner and thinner. So it's almost like you took a pyramid and squished the top of it and pulled it up like it was Play-Doh or something. So the kind of top of that pyramid for art is a lot thinner. So there's really good reason for you as an artist to work on improving your skills and get better at what you do, because your wages will increase dramatically with every improvement you make as an artist. So that's what I found. I'll kind of go through that, and you can kind of see if you look at my wages. Every time I kind of moved up, my pay jumped up quite a bit. And so especially in the more recent years, that's certainly been the case. And so part of that is because, like I said, that pool gets smaller the higher you go up, and so you can get a better pay by improving your skills. But there's other reasons as well. I was got wiser about how I negotiated for things, how I talked about money with my potential employers. So I want to talk about some of those lessons. So but regardless of your skill level, you're always going to be up against the pressure of the market realities of making art. So you need to understand those pressures, and you have to understand how you can benefit from them. So first, let's talk about negotiating a wage. The first thing you need to do in negotiating a wage is figure out what you are worth, and this is very difficult. A lot of employers actually actively work against you having good information about what you are worth, and that's one of the reasons why they usually have an advantage. Uh, but just to kind of give you an example of what I mean by this, an employer or a client is not going to pay you based on what your needs are. It doesn't matter that you have a baby on the way, that you've got a second mortgage, or that you've got a kid that's sick in the hospital with cancer. Like, those things do not matter to an employer. Your needs are not going to help you negotiate your wage. All that matters to an employee, or sorry, to an employer, is evidence of what you are worth. So I'm going to talk about a few ways that you can kind of figure this information out. And kind of the very first crudest way to do this is to use previous employment as a starting point. Now, I'm going to say that should be your absolute basement for negotiating. That should be the wage that you do not go under. I understand hard economic times do happen. Sometimes you do need to take a cut in pay, but for the most part, you should never accept an offer that is below what you were making at a previous job. So, when I first started out, this was kind of my basic negotiating strategy for my next two jobs. I just basically thought, I was making $12 at this job. I'll ask for $15 an hour at this next job. So, when I was first hired on at EA, I did the same thing, but this time around, I had to adjust the numbers for salary, which is a good opportunity to talk about how you adjust your wage from salary to hourly and back. The simple rule of thumb is to double your hourly rate and add three zeros to it. So, for example, when I was recruited by EA, I was making $25 an hour. So I asked for something around 50,000 a year. And I might have asked for a little bit more than that because they eventually started me at 55,000. So, not a very sophisticated strategy, but it did raise my wage. And again, part of that component is just increasing in skill level. I was able to kind of increase my wage. So I'm going to fast forward now through my 3 years I was at EA and the 8 months I was working freelance between EA and starting at Disney. Not much change with my wage while I was at EA. And here's an important principle. If you want a stable job, you'll get a stable wage. If you want your wage to increase, staying at the same place will take monumental work to make that happen, with no promise it will ever happen at all. I mean, you can really hustle as hard as you want to, but there is no guarantee that a company is going to repay that hard work with compensation. I've seen that so many times. So many artists working so hard, giving so much to a company, and there's just no guarantee. So many companies have these complex, employee development charts that show you like, oh, you need to advance to this level, go from an artist to being an associate artist to being a senior artist, blah 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 blah. And I think all of that is just kind of smoke and mirrors to make you think there is a path to kind of moving up and getting a better wage, but really there's no guarantee. They will only pay you more if they have to pay you more. So the other thing I should point out is as you are working a salaried job, you may hear about something like merit increases that are supposed to be raises after you do your employee evaluation every year. You're going to get like a merit increase. I had these at EA and at Disney, um, and they're supposed to be for performance, but in reality, these raises in wage never were more than 2%, which means that they're really just keeping pace with inflation. So don't be fooled by merit increases or any other stuff like that from an employee that's supposed to look like a raise. Always look at the percent increase and compare it to the rate of inflation over the last year. So, for the most part, inflation is around 2%. So if you have a raise that's not more than 2%, you aren't really getting a raise. And it's okay to mention that to your employer. When they say, hey, you're getting a raise of 2%, you should always mention, well, just so um, inflation this year was also 2%, so this is really not a raise. Make sure and tell them that. They should be aware that that you aren't getting a real raise. So after 3 years at EA, my salary was around 57,000, so not a huge increase in salary. I was laid off in the spring of 2012, and I worked for freelance for several months until getting an offer as a contract worker at Disney in December of that year. So this time around, I started to do a lot more research about negotiating. But by this time, I was a battle-weary veteran of the games and illustration industry. Definitely a little bit more cynical, but a little wiser. And I was putting a lot more thought into how I could increase my wage and get something a little bit better. Two great resources I stumbled upon during this time are salary.com and glassdoor.com. Salary.com is great because it gives you information on how to adjust salary for cost of living in different areas of the country. So, for example, if you're getting recruited to another area, they may say, hey, we're going to be paying you this salary. And it may seem like it's an increase, but you may be moving to an area of the country where the cost of living is much higher. And so you may not actually be getting or taking much home at the end of the day with cost of living. So you should absolutely be aware of that. Um, but the other nice thing about salary.com is that it will give you a kind of good general information about the just kind of the area you're interested in working in and what kind of a rough idea of what wages are for different levels of experience. And there's a lot of good articles on negotiating and things like that. Glassdoor is an awesome resource because gives you much more specific information. The way Glassdoor works is employees can anonymously give information about a company that they work for. So employees can go on Glassdoor and say, I made this much per year. This was my experience working with this company. These were the benefits. So this is an awesome resource. If you are looking at a specific company, you can go to Glassdoor and see exactly what someone else with the same level of experience as you was making while they were at that company. It also helps you just get much better data for the market that you are in. So I've worked my whole career in Salt Lake City, Utah, and so it's really important for me to know that what are other artists with my skill level being paid in Salt Lake City, Utah. And Glassdoor has been a very good resource to kind of get a general idea of that. And like I said, this is helps you get this information of what are you worth. You can go now to someone that's looking to hire you, and you have information and data to say that other people in this market are making this much. I should be making this much as well. Um, so another thing that ended up being just kind of serendipitous for me was that while I was working freelance, I was recruited by two separate slot machine gaming companies. And I didn't get far along in the recruitment process just because, slot machine gaming did not seem very appealing to me. And as an aside, if you want a good paying games job, slot machine gaming is good because I don't think a lot of artists want to do it. So I would absolutely look into that if you're interested in getting paid a little bit better. So I didn't get very far in the recruitment process, but from both of these companies, I was able to get a kind of ballpark idea of what salary they were willing to pay, and that really helped me with negotiating with Disney. So now I had information from salary.com, I had information from Glassdoor, and then I had these two places that had recruited me that said we are willing to pay you this. So those were my areas of getting information. The other area I could look at was, and this is super critical, and this is probably the most important thing I can discuss here in this discussion. Um, the other place you get data, it's super simple, is you need to ask your coworkers how much they make, or former coworkers. So this gets back to this raw nerve I was talking about before. I really cringe at the idea of doing this. Asking seems tacky and it seems really petty. And let me tell you, when you ask a coworker how much they made and find out you made 10,000 less than them, it's kind of a big blow to your ego. I mean, you feel like you're kind of worthless, and you feel like you're taking advantage of. But you have to get over this because the upside is you now have data. You know what an employer in your market is willing to pay, and you know that you can ask for it. And so, guess what? Employers do not want you to do this. So, in many of the jobs I've actually had employers sit me down on my first day and say, please don't share your wage information with other employees. They don't want you to do this because it gives you an advantage. Now, like I said, this is super important, but it is illegal for an employer to ask you to not share wage information with your employees, and it's illegal for them to do any kind of retribution to you for sharing that information. So this isn't just some trick to get ahead. This is considered to be a fundamental labor right that you have as an employee. Discussing wages with your coworkers is a form of collective bargaining, and it's a protected right, even if you live in a right to work state. What it means if you're in a right to work state, that just means that unions cannot kind of have exclusive reign over a certain business. Like there are some places where if you want to be working in a certain business, you have to use unionized workers. And well, it changes. Right to work states, they change in their policies from state to state, but at least in Utah, that's mostly what it means. It just means that like unions cannot kind of own an industry. But in any state, regardless of your right to work status, you have a fundamental right to collective bargaining. And as a matter of fact, there's an entire department of the federal government devoted to defending your right to collective bargaining. It's called the National Labor Relations Board, and you should look it up. I've included a link. So employers cannot legally ask you to keep your wages secret or reprimand you for sharing wage information or really any form of collective bargaining. And you have the right to negotiate collectively for your wage too. So this is kind of cool. So if you are a salaried employee, you have actually the right to approach your HR with several of your coworkers and negotiate your wage together. Like that is something that you are protected by law to do. And that seems like really funny and awkward to do, but that's actually something that could be completely to your advantage. If you are in a small art department, you can get everyone in the art part department together and go negotiate together, and it gives you a lot more negotiating power. Never done it, but I know that you can do it. And just so you know, the National Labor Relations Board, or the NLRB, is serious business. They take action against employers that violate these rights. So be aware of what they do. If you do have someone that's kind of violating your rights, you can contact the NLRB, and they'll open a case and should help you get the rights that you need. So I wouldn't kind of rub this in your employer's face or make too big of a deal about it, but you should be aware of the rights you have and you should know where to go if they are violated. Okay, so a little bit of an aside, but I think that's extremely important to know what your rights are in that regard. You should, just to reiterate, you should know that you have a right to share your wage information with your coworkers. All right, done with that. So, with this knowledge in hand, when I first started at Disney, it was a contract position, so it was paid hourly. So, I basically asked for $40 an hour. I was being pretty aggressive with my negotiation because of some of these other offers I had received. And we ended up agreeing to $34 an hour, which I was happy with. Um, so, the last opportunity I had to negotiate for a salary was when Disney hired me on full time. And I'll use this last example to illustrate one more important concept, and that is to always ask for more. So here's the thing: the HR department will be approved to offer you a certain salary, but they always start by offering less. So in the case of getting a salary offer at Disney, they offered 70,000. I asked for 75, I think, and we ended up at 72. So for just a tiny bit of effort of just saying, "Hey, can I have more?" I got a big return that lasted the whole time I was employed there. So it's really worth your time just to always ask for more when you were given an offer. Almost every employer is going to have wiggle room to give you a little bit more. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to be aggressive. One way I kind of think about it is when you're talking about wages and benefits, always be aggressive, always be a jerk. And then in every other place, be as hardworking, pleasant, eager, and helpful as possible. Um, but the negotiating part is the one place where you really need to be selfish and thinking about your needs. Um, so I've got to say that honestly, doing this stuff doesn't make me comfortable. It makes me feel kind of sometimes a little bit like a slimy wheeler dealer. But you know what? We all need to get over that. And there's something extremely important to remember when you're fighting for a better wage. When you negotiate for a higher wage, it raises the wage of all other artists. When you share your wage, it raises the wage of all other artists. You are helping yourself, but doing this stuff makes it easier for all of us to make a living. So remember when I talked about this pyramid that's very, very thick at the bottom because you have all these artists in there that want to get into the business. And so many of them are willing to work for free. And what that does is when so many artists are willing to work for free, people are less willing to pay money for an artist to create their artwork. So, how do we reverse that trend? We reverse that trend by asking for more, by demanding to be paid more. When you really push for a higher wage, when you get this better information, and when you start treating the profession and yourself like it deserves to be paid more, that helps everyone else in the profession. We all make a better living. So, if you are sitting down in a situation negotiating, just remember that. Remember that by negotiating for a higher wage, you are helping all of us. So it's a way that you're being unselfish as well. So what's happened since then? Well, I decided to leave Disney in September of 2015 to pursue comics full time. And of this writing, I am making the worst salary I've ever made since I graduated from college. I'm living off a combination of the generosity of my wife, who decided to go back to work, and a little bit of savings here and there. So that's my journey. I've never been a millionaire, but I've been incredibly lucky. I've been able to take care of the needs of my family, and I've been able to save a little bit of money along the way. So sounds kind of like the American dream, huh? There are others that have done better than me, but I can't complain. So I've never had to be a starving artist, and I've always been able to get by. So just to conclude, I mean, this is not a get rich quick type of discussion here. I'm not going to promise you wealth by following any of this advice, but my hope is that as you go out and start negotiating, you can start just tipping things into your benefit a bit more, and at the very least make a decent, respectable living as an artist. And that is just like such an exciting and wonderful thing to be able to be a part of. So that's it. I'd love to get your reactions. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you have any questions, any additional questions or clarifications, please ask me. And of course, if you like this video, please like it and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.